Imagine having a place to easily store all your travel dreams, plans, and adventures. Our guest searched for such a platform, and when she couldn't find one, she created it. I'm so excited to learn from this Femtech founder. Come join us for a delicious conversation on the Startup Life live show. Let's glow. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Startup Life Live Show. I'm your host, Andy Lyons, 4 times founder and startup champion to founders around the world. And after raising 4 businesses of my own, I now share founder startup stories to help newly minted business owners find the solutions and inspiration they need to succeed. And I am so grateful you carved out time to watch this episode of the Startup Life Live Show, because you never know, a new tool, a new thought, new idea, a new solution. Just listening to the conversation could inspire you to have another aha moment and take your business to the next level. So thanks so much for tuning in. And if you're joining us live or via replay, say hello in the comments. We'd love to say hi back and share whatever it is that you've got going on with your business. And thank you for sharing your love on the video that you're watching. We're going live right now on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. I feel like I have to have a dance for that. And so whenever you click on the like button, it goes out to your feed, and you never know who you might help by sharing this episode of the Startup Life Live Show, because we're all about maximizing the joy and minimizing the heartache of founder journeys. And on YouTube, if you're tuned in on YouTube right now and you haven't done so already, I'd be so grateful for your subscribe. Just click that button right there and click on the bell icon. It really helps us reach more founders, so I'm grateful for your support. And how do you know when we post a new show and bring on another incredible guest like the one we have today? Well, you join the Startup Life Meetup group. You either scan that code right there, the QR code, if you're watching live, or those in the podcast. I have the link in the show notes. It's bit.ly/Startup Life Live. And that way you'll get an alert whenever I post a new show. I'm here most Tuesdays and Fridays interviewing diverse founders from around the world. And if you resonate with the show's mission of amplifying diverse founders from across the world, then I would love to chat with you about sponsorship. I'm just going to pull up a little slide right here. Your sponsorship helps me reach more founders, more startup folks in villages, in areas around the world that do not have the resources that we enjoy so much here in Boston and other cities do around the world. So please reach out to me about that. And hey, I don't know if you know, but if you want to listen to the Startup Life Live Show, you can hop onto your favorite podcast or just go to iHeart, Spotify, iTunes, and you'll find the show. And sometimes it's easier to listen than watch the video. So please join me there as well for a lot of delicious conversations. So I'm excited to share with you the story behind our guest today. So let me give you a quick background while you're looking at her wonderful promo piece right here. And it's Jacqueline Hampton. She's the founder of Portico, your ultimate travel organizer that helps you save, plan, and share amazing adventures all in one place. Portico was born by fusing together aspects of Jacqueline's professional and personal life, merging her knowledge from being CEO of Springpad, a personal organizer with over 5 million registered users, with her strategy and business development skills and love of travel. Jacqueline's career has spanned IT consulting to media investment banking to corporate development to tech. And hello, in her free time, Jacqueline has visited 35 countries and circled the globe. Oh my gosh, clearly her professional and personal lived experiences have prepared her to lead Portico Travel to greatness as its fab female founder. Let's bring her into the room and cheer on the one and only Jacqueline Hampton. How you doing?
Good. Hi, Andy. Thanks so much for having me on the show today. I'm really excited to be here.
I am so happy to see you and so happy to share this conversation with you and share your stories. And also, what traveling 35 countries? Like, did you get hit by a bug one day? Was this something that you always loved doing? What was it about travel?
The travel bug hit me when I was a very young child and actually couldn't travel. But I grew up with pictures of penguins from Antarctica on the walls of our family room. So my father was in the Navy and he had been to Antarctica and brought
Yeah.
back those photos. And then at Thanksgiving, we'd eat on China that he had brought back from Japan. So I just found a fascination with other cultures really early on. But didn't start my real travel until I was in my 20s. So
Wow.
I've hit 35, but I have many more to go.
Yay! I love that. It's so adventurous to get out there and see other countries and have different experiences under other folks' rules, other folks' homes, other folks' communities. I think that's fabulous. I want to just bring this up in case anybody's tuning in live today. Be sure to amplify your brand and share your business name, one-liner, and website URL in the comments because we will showcase you and we will go woohoo for you and all that you're doing. And do not hesitate to pop questions and comments in the comment threads. Again, even if you're watching this on replay, we can get back to you if you have a specific question or want more information. Okay. Before we dive in, Jacqueline, I always like to start off with what we're feeling grateful for today with our businesses. What are you feeling really grateful for right now on your roller coaster ride as a founder?
That's a really interesting question, Andy. I'm grateful every day for comments that we get from our users and how much of a positive impact that we're having on their lives and just making it easier and more fun to plan meaningful travel. So we have some conversations set up with some of our power users this week, and those are really keeping me going.
I love it. So, folks, Jacqueline has a serious background, professional background. I mean, she's done some amazing things in corporate America. And I'm always laughing about why did anybody leave payroll and benefits to start a business? So, Jacqueline,
Sure.
share with us, because you were working hard in senior leadership roles for corporations. What called you to launch your business, solve this problem, and become an entrepreneur?
Sure. For me, it was a two-step process, really. For the first step in terms of leaving corporate world, I really wanted to get closer to running a business and to being able to create real product. So I certainly didn't do that in investment banking, although I helped a lot of other companies do that. Got closer at timing, but really wanted to move more in that direction. So that was step one and the purpose for moving up to Boston from New York City. And then step two, I didn't actually intend to be an entrepreneur, but when I was at Springpad, I hacked that for the purpose of travel. So it was a personal organizer, and it was kind of a cross between Pinterest and Evernote. And that gave me an idea as to how I could solve a problem that I saw in the space where I felt like leisure travelers had really been neglected in the tools that had been built for them. And so, as you mentioned before, it was kind of my personal and professional worlds
Right.
collided, and I just had to follow my heart and do it.
Oh my gosh. And did you start it as a side hustle first, Jacqueline?
It's a side hustle for quite some time. Yes.
I'm cheering you on for that. According
Yes.
to Adam Grant, the author of Originals, side hustlers have like a 30+% chance, greater chance of success. Good for you. How long was it a side hustle?
It was a side hustle off and on for probably 2 years at least. And it was, we weren't creating product in the beginning, but in the beginning, it was just an idea.
Yeah.
And so for me, I had to test that concept. I actually taught myself how to design wireframes and talk to experts in terms of user testing and kind of what would that very simple flow be. My first designs for Portico were actually on 3x5 note cards.
Yes.
And then kind of went from there. So.
Oh, come on. And did you have any background in tech at all?
I Not specific from a standpoint of development, but I had been the CEO of Springpad for a year and was always very familiar with and comfortable with technology. It was most of what I looked at Time Inc. But all of these were new things. So part of the way I learn is I have conversations with experts So I would go and sit down with somebody who did user testing for a living and say, can you spend an hour with me? Can you spend coffee with me? And kind of work through that process, tons of research online. We had an amazing designer at Springpad. I sat with him for a while. He helped me once I got to the point where I passed the first test and wanted to make things look a little bit more official.
I know. And see, this is what I love about your story, folks. You don't have to have a big, deep background in tech. You have to have a solution for a problem that needs to be solved that you're really passionate about so that you can get up every day no matter what and keep working on it. And I love the fact that, you start off with the 3x5 cards. I mean, you have to take that vision, put it down and say, those are the beautiful baby steps, Jacqueline, that one can take. And I just love this example to start saying, okay, so how do I go from here? And what YouTube video do I need to watch? And what expert do I need to talk to understand what happens to get it to here and then to here? Because
it starts that way. And then the other thing, Andy, I did in the beginning is, for me, I'm a color person and I needed some color and creativity. And so when I thought about the company overall, I had a bunch of white pieces of paper and I had a different color pen on each one. And it was marketing, customer, technology, kind of all the different aspects of the business that I needed to think about from a strategic perspective and what my vision was for those and things that we would have to think through.
See, and that's why they call it the business map or business canvas. You are an artist, folks. And Jacqueline, that's so great. Because it will trigger that part of your brain that brings even more creative problem solving skills into that. Oh, that is so great. And so here you had your background. Did you have any marketing or biz dev background in the roles that you had?
Yeah, so business development. So when I was at Time Inc., I ran what's called corporate development for them. So anything we looked at from an M&A perspective, an investments perspective, second guessing business plans. So we were constantly thinking about strategically how might a company grow and how might it fit into Time Inc. from a partnership standpoint. So those are all things that I kind of brought in with me.
Brilliant. Yeah. Brilliant. And so how about in your life? I mean, had you seen anybody be an entrepreneur? Any role models? Did people?
No, just in Boston, but not before that. That was all new and different for me.
Oh my gosh. And how many people around you were going, oh my God, what is she doing?
Probably a lot, but they know I am driven, and when I have a passion and a vision and I want to do something, I'm going to figure out some way to accomplish it. That's just part of who I am. And I had a lot of role models from the standpoint of embracing new things. As I mentioned earlier, I grew up in West Virginia in a small college town, but I watched all my siblings accomplish so much and just have an amazing work ethic.
The pressure.
And they really inspired me. And my mother was a teacher. And so I really have a love of learning from her. And I think that's a critical thing in being an entrepreneur is there's so many different things that you have to learn to be willing to engage in all of that and just get up to speed a little bit on every single one.
Talk a little bit about that, because I think that's such an important lesson for founders to take in, is that willingness to learn and be wrong.
Well, it's two things. So one is willingness to learn about a lot of different things, because there's not a single role in a business. I have to know a little bit about sales and partnerships, about marketing, about SEO and SEM, about product, about development. There's all these different aspects where you need to be able to talk with your team and understand what they're trying to say to you so that you can ask intelligent questions and you can come to a conclusion together. So that is definitely true. And then I'm happy to go dive right into some failing stories if you'd like, because there's plenty of those along the way.
Well, let's talk about that, because you had to prove your MVP. And we talk about the value prop every single episode, folks.
Yeah.
You know how I feel about this, because so often we think we've come up with the next best thing since sliced bread without doing the work. And I understand that you can be very excited and emotionally charged and passionate about your solution for a problem. But until you get the critical feedback, you don't know. So talk about that. What did you learn as you started testing and pulling together your minimum viable product?
Sure. So Andy, you're absolutely right. Passion isn't everything in this business. You have to have a product that resonates with consumers. And in the travel space, or any space, frankly, where you're dealing with individual consumers, they have really high expectations. And so there's this balance and dancing game as to what you put into the market and when you talk to people about it. So one of the very early tests I did, I'm going to credit Hugh Crane. I don't know if he'll listen to this, but I will give him credit for this.
Who is this?
He was a travel entrepreneur in the Boston space a long time ago and has an advisor for a handful of Boston startups right now.
Great.
But he did told me about the Starbucks test. So I actually went to Starbucks or Pete's or whatever you want for your local coffee shop. I had a little prototype kind of click through of Portico, and I would walk up to a random person in the coffee line, or sometimes I just sit and wait and try and talk to the person who was next to me. And I'd say to them, my sister has this idea for this travel company and she wants to quit her job and do it. And I'm really not so sure about it. Would you mind taking a look at it and telling me your thoughts? And it was a fascinating exercise because instead of them worrying about saying something to you because you're not admitting it's your own, you framed it in this negative context. So if their response is positive, it's all the more positive that it's coming back at you with a negative frame to start with.
I have to tell you, that is definitely going to be a solo video clip, and I'm definitely having one of these. Founders.
Yeah. It's amazing both from the standpoint of what you learn. It's also amazing from the guts that you have to have. And I have to work up your energy to just approach a random person and ask you questions with respect to it. So that was.
But how many people looked at you and go, "Your sister"? Uh-huh.
No,
or did they really feel that way?
They actually really dove in and gave me great feedback. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I just want to applaud you for having the courage to do that. That's so important. And what was his name, Mr. Green?
Hugh Crane.
Hugh Crane. Okay, Andrea. Hugh Crane. I call myself Andrea when I have a formal moment with myself.
It's Crean. So Hugh Crane.
Excellent. But
that was one early on. And then we've just done a lot of user testing along the way because it's something that's so important. So, and you have to continue to do it and be willing to change. So I know early on, before we had a live product, we were doing user testing and certain things were confusing people. And so I was like, okay, let's simplify this. And let's make you can only add an idea into your ideas section. Like if you're actively planning and you're seeing the maps, then you can't add an idea in there because it's too confusing to people. So we went, headstrong down that path based on user feedback. And then we got into a live product and we started watching videos, and every single person would go into our planning section and try to add something new there. And we were like, wait a minute. This is not what the feedback that we got before, but now that things have changed, now that we're live, it's the feedback that we're getting. And so now we need to change it. So now it's sort of like you can add wherever you want. You can add in ideas, you can add on the map, you can actually click on something directly and add it. You start typing and we recognize if it's not already in your trip, you want to add something new. So I think user feedback along the way is really critical to getting that MVP that works.
Oh my God, Jacqueline, that was just like the ideal example of thinking that, you get the feedback, folks, this, founders, if you're getting frustrated, this is just part of the experience. It's not just you. Your customers will give you this feedback. You can be like, boom, 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 full on. And then what? They're not doing this.
Yeah. And I think the second part of the Starbucks test is the further you get along, the more you need to have people test it who don't know you and do it in an isolated place. So our head of product did a lot of our user testing because it's different when the founder's on. They think the founder's more emotionally involved. So sometimes I'd step back from that. And some of it was on platforms like Usability Hub or userinterviews.com or usertesting.com. So where could we find someone like that who is willing to test the product for us, and what feedback could we get from them? That is a certain mentality of someone who understands testing products. Sure. So the ultimate, I think, for us was when we decided to start doing SEM marketing. And when you can go out and you do SEM marketing and they know nothing about you. So there's no associated brand. There's nothing there. It's just like a one-line text. And if they click that and then they see Portico and they sign up for Portico and they just start using it and start saving tons and tons of ideas, that's when you know you really have some product market fit.
That's right. Okay. Now we can all do the big congratulations for proving your value prop moment. Thank you. And thank you for that great story, This great stories, Jacqueline, because we all need to be reminded that we need to continue to get the different users'
Yeah.
feedback and to understand what makes sense, what doesn't, and also be ready to pivot when they do, because they're just like, group of sandpipers first running this way after one wave and running this way after another wave.
You definitely have to be willing to change. And I think the key thing is understanding the context in which you get that feedback, and then stepping back from it. So not taking it literally all the times, because sometimes you need to dig to understand what the real problem and the real issue is underneath it, and then come up with a more creative solution. You don't necessarily get creative solutions handed to you in user testing. So you've got to work with what you get from it.
And honestly, it's the travel industry. I would have thought this was going to be done already. I mean, don't you think that, how is it that you came in and were trying to find a platform that maybe Kayak or Travelocity or Expedia had pulled together? How did you find this, what we call the white space, that clear lane that you can dive into?
Sure.
How did you find that?
So this white space has been around for a long time, Andy, and a lot of people have tried, and it's been a complicated space over time.
I see.
Some of that is technology and how comfortable we are saving our information in the web. I mean, think 15 years ago, we were still ripping pages out of magazines. And the iPhone didn't exist. So a tool like this wouldn't have made sense. Yeah. So how much technology has moved along, how we have Dropbox, we have, WhatsApp, we have all sorts of things on our phone. We're on our phone a lot more. So we need to make sure that we're on all platforms. That's a big difference.
Yes.
Paper doesn't transition very well when you're out to dinner and you're trying to save in an idea that somebody mentions to you, or you're trying to say, oh, you're going to Rome, you should go to this tiny little coffee shop. Let me pull up Portico and I'll just share it with you. So things like that have definitely changed. And then part of it is a question of why are you building the model? Are you really building it for the consumer, which is what we're doing at Portico? Or are you building it just because you want to make a business that sells, you want to create a business that sells a ton of stuff and sell it to somebody else, basically? And I say that from the standpoint of many people failed in this space because they didn't understand the concept of a bucket list trip. So as soon as you created a trip, they'd be like, great, here's a flight, here's a hotel, here's this, here's a that. And that's not what the consumer wants. So the consumer comes in and says, oh, I think I might want to go to London next year. Let me start saving a couple ideas. And then, oh, somebody just mentioned a restaurant in San Francisco. Let me save that too. But they might have no idea as to when they want to go to that place.
That's right.
So that's one of the keys of Portico. Is really at any stage in your travel journey, those stages, if it's after the fact and you're trying to remember what you did, like we're there to help you all along the way. And I think my media background really made a play in it because the aesthetic of it is so important to make it feel comfortable and inspiring. So there's these stats that say that 80% of people enjoy the research process, but 70% get overwhelmed by it. So part of what we're trying to do is take that drudgery away. So whether it's an inspiring photo every time you come in, or if it's the intelligent alerts on our map that tell you when you schedule a museum on Monday and it's closed on that day and we tell you that, that's what we're trying to do. So how do we make it more fun and more interesting, which a lot of that is visual, and make it very intuitive? And then how do we pull that drudgery away so that you make sure that you're not missing a place? So we do a lot of things, content on the Portico 6 must-see places. We're not a 50 things to do type of company. Our brain can't handle that much. Like, let's just give you the 6 must-see places, each with a little twist to kind of keep you going, because otherwise there's the possibility of missing stuff. I had one trip when I was in Split in Croatia, and I almost left Split without seeing one of the most amazing things there, which were these old rooms that were underneath Diocletian's palace where I had been staying. But that was the trip when I decided to just wing it and not do a lot of research. So I was literally leaving town with a friend, and our other friends were like, wait, aren't you coming downstairs? These rooms are supposed to be amazing. It was one of the highlights of our trip. So behind the Portico 6 must-see places, like these are things you need to know about and you shouldn't miss, or at least if you decide not to go, you've made a conscious choice to do that.
I love this Something Fierce because I'm a fan of all trails. I do a lot of hiking, and we'll just be driving around. We'll pull up the map, and All Trails will say, oh, wow, just about a mile away is this little thing. we have come across more outstanding trails by just being random like that. And I see Portico doing that for folks. Well, you know what? I want some coffee, but I don't want to go with Google for coffee. I want to know what other travelers loved. And, or now they can do a snapshot and save it for next time or to share with their friends, right? Whenever.
That's our goal, Andy. So
Yeah.
the more data that we get in Portico and the more people save, the more we want to surface ideas to people based on other travelers who have similar interests. So we do some curated content that comes from us, but we really want to be able to mine all that amazing stuff that people are saving within Portico and deliver it back to people. So whether it's coffee shops or food's another thing that we're really big on, because I think food is so critical to understanding a culture. So anytime we do city guides, we also do like the 6 foods you must eat in that place. And sometimes, we'll mention specific restaurants, or pastry shops or whatever. But other times, like if you go to Paris, just go have a baguette. Go to the place around the corner, which is sold out of them by 10 a.m. It doesn't matter where you go. They're amazing everywhere. Baguette or croissant, that's what you need to have.
But I'm sure listeners, aren't you thrilled that it's just 6 ideas? I get overwhelmed by the 50, the 75, even the 20. I love that 6 because you can feed off that 6. You can worm your way around into other things and pull on other threads. So that's 6. And one thing, I'm just going to go back to All Trails again for just a second, that I rely on too are the reviews that people leave. Oh, this is rated moderate, but I found this to be, and it wasn't dog friendly or this and that. Does Portico have that capability as well?
So we've done a higher level concept for right now, because one of the things that we've found with reviews is it's very hard for you to understand who the reviewer is. Yeah. So instead of reviewing a specific place, we're showing you other people's content within the context of their trip. And then you could heart that trip if you're interested in it. So sort of the Food 52 model. Yeah. But it came from, we had a food and wine editor reading someone's trip to Hawaii. She may know that as I say it. And she looked at a restaurant. She was like, oh, that's good. And she looked at the next one. Oh, that's good. And she got to the 4th one. She's like, wow, she's really good. She knows the inside scoop. So we try to do it in that context, because if you're going to, let's just say, if you're going to McDonald's one day and a 5-star Michelin restaurant the next day, and you're doing reviews on both, you're going to have a very different perspective than if you're going to 2 boutique-y type restaurants.
And everybody, that's what it's like with movies or books. Yeah. You will see a movie or read a book and you'll be like, oh, the best ever. And someone will be like,
Yeah. So I think it's all about context and how you put it in the context of the person and what type of traveler they are.
So you have something going on that's, investors will always challenge, which is that you are a solo founder at this point in time, right?
That's correct.
Talk about that.
Yeah.
How has that journey been, coming in and being the fab female founder in charge?
Look, I think solo founders versus co-founders is all situation dependent and company dependent, based on what your skill set is, kind of where you are in the company when you find other people, and kind of what your path is going forward. So for me, as a sole founder, it was still critical to have amazing team members early on. And there's no way I could have built Portico without the team that I have. It also depends on whether people are full-time or freelance, kind of what ability they have to commit based on their own family situation too. So you have to take all of that into context. But as a solo founder, who's on your team that you really rely on and you have those open, honest discussions with is critical. And then forming, whether it's an informal advisory board or a personal advisory board or just a lot of mentors, something like that is really important. I'm in quite a few groups in Boston, whether it's Scroobius or Startup Boston CEOs. And some, then I have some informal groups as well where I go to when I need help. Or I need a question that I need to walk through and kind of talk to them about. If it's a management thing, then I go through it from that perspective. If you're really young, I would not advise being a solo founder. I had, 20 plus years in the industry and in corporate world. And one of the keys, we didn't talk about this before, but the corporate world really taught me was the professionalism of work and how to manage teams and how to network and how to kind of think through all of those things strategically.
Yeah. And it's invaluable, folks. Even if you just go dip your toe in for about 12 months, or like me, I went to work at a major bank after I earned my MBA, not because it was a fit, but because I wanted to learn how banks thought. I wanted to do financial analysis on every industry type company out there. But I was clearly not a fit. But but you get this additional polish that you will need as you start to build your company from startup into enterprise stage. And so I've always liked the story about the young man who founded Squarespace for websites, right? He did it in college. So he'd never hired anybody in his life or fired. So, the mentors are really important, and co-founders can bring more of that seasoned experience. Thank you for that great advice. So have you been funding this through Bootstrap? Have you raised money? How has that experience been for you?
Sure. It's a mixture of all, which is what you do as a startup. So, in the beginning, I was doing a lot of the work for free, because it was just my idea at that point in time. And then when we started to bring the team on, we brought in some angel funding. We went through, being startup scrappy. We did freelance for a lot of stuff for a while. And the best thing, frankly, is that I found a team that really believes in our mission, and they are worth so much more than Portico can afford to pay them, but they still work for us.
Full time?
No, not all of them, but you don't need, that's I think critical thing in a startup is thinking about the person and whether or not you need them full time and for how long you need them. So if you're looking at something like SEM or SEO, where you do need some expertise, as a startup, that's not a full-time role.
No, that is outsourced.
That is outsourced. For us, content, that's not a full-time role, that's outsourced as well. Even if you think about our iOS developer, we have an amazing freelancer who's doing iOS for us, but we started on the web. And so we didn't need that role in the beginning either. So there's a variety of different ways that you kind of patchwork it all together. So
I have to say, Jacqueline, you must make investors' hearts sing with joy. You have had to onboard team and manage them, and you're a CEO at Springpad, all of that, right? So you are bringing all of that leadership capability, because y'all made your mistakes already.
And although we always still make mistakes. There's been some at Portico as well, and I'm sure there will be more in the future. I think it's just a question of how can you learn from them, and also how can you cut it off, and the cutting it off, when we first built our iOS app, we built it one direction using a language that we thought would be better in the long run. And then we got partway down the road and we realized it didn't work. It didn't feel right. It didn't fit the polish of Portico. You couldn't explain exactly why, but from an aesthetic standpoint, from an intuitiveness, from a flow, it just wasn't working. And I give my team credit for walking in one day and saying to me, we think that we need to scrap this and to rebuild. And I looked at him, I was like, are you sure? Because we just spent a lot of time.
Let me just sit down.
And it was a very hard decision to do but we had to remember that it was water under the bridge, and you didn't want to put more money after bad money. It was water under the bridge, and it was to no fault of the team that we had hired to do it, because they were great and very, very good to work with, but just the language wasn't working for what we want to do. We scrapped it, we changed it, we found a new person, we did it in a different way, and people love it. It's awesome now. It's so, so great.
We're going to give Jacqueline another round of applause for this great founder journey story, everybody. Oh my gosh. First of all, thank you for listening to your team. And I want all the founders out there listening. I know it's expensive to pull on threads or do an experiment and not have it work out. But for you to create the right experience, not just for your own aesthetic needs, but for your end users' aesthetic needs, you have to be willing to understand, I pulled on this thread, I thought it would work. It did not. Scrap. And I love that you had a team aligned with you, Jacqueline, that was willing to say to you, no, this is not in alignment with what we get your vision to be.
Yeah, it took a lot of guts. I give him credit for that, but it was the right decision. It's a hard one, but it's the right decision. And I would encourage anybody, for going down a new path, like, set specific milestones to really take time to sit back and reflect. You can get caught up in the details so easily of just like, what's next? When are we going to get this out? But you really need to take that time to literally sit back and think about what you're doing, and is it still the right path?
Right. This is not the, oh, it needs to be perfect situation, folks. This is the, it needs to be right for who you're serving. And so, and again, you don't know what you don't know until you try.
Yeah.
And that's the whole founder journey, is we learn as we glow. Hey, Mia Voss, thanks for swinging by and saying hi. You are a world traveler too. So I know you and Jacqueline have a lot in common with the love of travel. Everybody, Mia Voss, I love to do a shout out every show for her. She's the host of the Shit We Don't Talk About podcast. Hop on to wherever you glow, or go to Shit We Don't Talk About, I think it's .podcast, to subscribe, because the conversations are so meaningful and so incredible. It's a great way to fill your life with more conversation. And Mia, what Jacqueline is doing on Portico, I know it'd make your heart sing. And I hope you can hop on over there to go to portico.travel and check it out, because it's remarkable. It's just going to jam with what you love with your travel experience as well. So Jacqueline, thanks for sharing that solo founder journey, what that's like, and how you're funding the business along the way. Have you, in making, you've been making presentations to folks for quite a while, so I know you're a polished presenter and persuasive presenter, but this is an interesting quandary many female founders find themselves in, which is the kind of unconscious bias that happens when you're talking to investors. What has been your experience? Any stories you can share to help other female founders navigate while they're raising funds?
Sure. I think it's a hard one, Andy. I'm in technology, so that's a male-dominated space. I'm also in travel, which is the male-dominated space. So the best advice I have is to build your network around you such that you can bounce ideas off of them. Because what I find complicated is that I think the bias that we experience is not necessarily explicit. So if I look at my experiences, there aren't key examples that I can pull out where I've seen it in a room happen to me, but I feel it in different ways in terms of when I'm invited into conversations and when I'm not invited into conversations.
Ooh, that's good. And just reminding the female founders out there, there's a lot of ways to navigate it. I've got Debbie Klein's book, First Pitch. She has a wonderful chapter on that. Last Friday, we interviewed Everett Harper, who actually talked about the bro culture. And so we can dive deeper into how we can navigate those different areas. I mean, like, we don't have enough on our plate already as founders.
Yeah, but I think there's also some great groups that you can use as allies, or some excellent groups that you can, like if I think about the founder groups that I'm here in Boston, there's no bias in those whatsoever. Like, we're all in there to help each other. We can put out whatever we need in terms of questions, like kind of there's no embarrassment in asking any sort of question. So you can definitely,
you have a voice and it's heard.
You have a voice and it's heard. And then there are other groups that you can join, whether it's the fourth floor or chief or things like that, where you have to make a conscious decision which group's right for you. Tory Burch does some stuff. There's Female Founders Alliance. All of those are different places where you can find another platform and another voice of people who might be experiencing what you're experiencing, but can also support you. So I've done a variety of different things with them. I found a particular home in Chief. Personally, I've just met some really amazing women there.
Excellent.
And made some great connections that are important for Portico. So it is complicated. You do have to navigate those waters, but there are resources that are out there for you to help you as you go through it.
Yeah. Female founders, you've got this. It is what it is. It will get better. It will get easier. And there are other women here who can share their stories and add wind to your sails to help you understand what is a hill I want to die on versus how to continue to bring the conversation always back to your mission, your vision, and your traction, how you're nailing it right now. So thank you, Jacqueline, for that insight and advice for other female founders out there. Let's talk a little bit about acquiring customers, because you get the platform up, you're funding it, you got this great team, you figured all these things out, but now you got to bring on the paid customers who are going to bring you the revenue that you have in your pro formas. What is that like? Talk a little bit about that for Portico.
Exactly. So there are a couple different worlds that we think about it for Portico, Andy. So one is about the consumer and the engagement that we're getting with them. And we're a B2C business primarily. So there are a bunch of different paths that we have to go down and figure out like what's the right channel for us. So as I mentioned, we've been testing some waters with SEM. We have social media presence as well. We have a virality component so that users, when they come in and create a trip, can invite others in or they can share their ideas. So we're constantly thinking through all these different avenues from a marketing perspective as to how to find and acquire more users. Also working through partnerships, kind of doing blog posts to other places, highlighting other influencers on our own blog posts. All of that goes through kind of acquiring that customer. And then quite a few of our competition have actually launched a subscription model already. Okay. And that's one of the things that we've talked about doing. So in doing that, again, you got to go back to your customer and to your user. And so we're having conversations with users around that and what might that look like and what feels comfortable to them and what sort of feature set would be there. And it's our decision in the long run. But at the same time, we want to get as much advice and as much information around it as we can. And then the second piece is really around that business development piece that you talked about before. So when I look at Portico, we have a sense as to all the different countries that people want to go to, not just one trip, but all of them, and when they're traveling. So that is a gold mine for someone who's trying to reach them, to sell them a tour or to sell them an experience. And so that's a whole different part of networking that I do to start to reach out to those players in terms of, even though we're still smaller and newer, how can we experiment with them around bringing valuable content to our users and bringing value to them as well. So you'll see it when you look in our destination guides. We do a bunch of Portico articles, but then we also find insiders, and our insiders might be really interesting and really unique. So when we did our LA guide, we had some that were around surfing or food tours, and those are ones that might want to sell to our consumer as well. And then we always throw in something fun and different. We did a gallery, an artist who owns a gallery there, and she did street art in LA. So it's how do we make that flow and interaction such that our consumers are benefiting and that they're getting more value out of Portico, and we can work towards that kind of latte a month plan, as I call it. Right. But then also, creating value for broadening their knowledge of a place by bringing tour groups and others. So and check back in 6 months.
I know.
Maybe now and then.
It's fluid, and we're always looking for ways to, keep the revenue coming in, because of course that adds value. Traction adds value to your business. So founders, if you're going to raise money, get some traction going on, because you'll be able to give away less of your ownership of your business when you have traction.
Traction's key, and testing that revenue is key. What are they willing to pay for, and what's the price threshold?
Boy, and that's an ongoing daily thing, right?
100%, because it depends upon what your competitors are doing, where they're pricing things, what their product looks like yours. There's all sorts of different things you have to think about. Even if your product is 10 times better than your competitors, you can't charge 10 times the price. There's just something about it, negotiating and kind of like bounds in our minds as to how we think about pricing. Unfortunately, you get trapped by that sometimes.
And this is what Jacqueline does so well, folks. Let me give you an example. She just put it out to the world. I need to talk to somebody about pricing, right? Because we're not born with this knowledge, all right? We're not, unless you had to be responsible for pricing for some CPG or service company, really. And even then, it's going to be completely different with your business for who you are and who you're serving. And so I love that you reached out and let the world know that you were curious. How am I going to do this? And this is why, as founders, we need to stay curious and let others teach us what they learn, because sometimes it is a mathematical equation. Sometimes it's different parts and pieces all coming together for the price. And even then, you're going to figure out down the road what works better and what doesn't. And you also said you were using influencers. How has that helped you?
So part of that is expanding the reach in terms of the audience that can find us. And so it's twofold. So one, it's expanding the reach in terms of us getting exposure to their audience. And then also for us, frankly, it's just promoting people within the space. So, we love promoting other people that we think have a very interesting perspective on travel. So we did some kind of went early on when the pandemic started, more around hiking, the modern hiker. We did the Mike Scheibel from Travel with Meaning. We did Melissa Shantang recently, which was more around fashion and travel. So how do we get diverse subjects that interact with travel and make sure that we're also highlighting diverse influencers as well? So it's really, I don't want to say pro-equal, it's really a partnership in terms of we believe in something in common around travel, which we all do, about how it helps you grow, how it can be restorative, how it helps you understand better other cultures, which then helps you at home as well, and can help us start to bridge some of these cultural gaps that exist today.
Yes.
So it's making sure we're on the same page with these people and then supporting each other as we try to build a bigger.
Exactly. And it's all about the experience and the adventure with Portico Travel, I believe, in that you aren't about how are they going to get there. It's about what are you going to do when you get there? Or it may be a few years before you're able to do this. How are you dreaming about this now? How are you building toward a really great experience, right? An adventure. Could be that, honeymoon. It could be that anniversary trip. It could be a celebratory trip, or just a dream you've had forever to see Australia.
Yeah, Andy, you're exactly right. And for me, it's that, restaurant that I read about that, like, or you watch the movie When Hiro Dreams of Sushi, and you're like, oh, I want to go to the sushi place that's in the subway in Tokyo, but you need somewhere to write it down because you may not remember the name of the movie. And then you may not realize that someone from there actually went and created a sushi restaurant in Seattle. So you should go there too. And so I found that I had scraps of paper in different places. And then I have saved Instagram posts, and then I have emails and texts and all this.
Yeah, some things pinned to the whiteboard, some things
scattered all over the place. And so part of Portico being your digital companion for everything travel is that you send us those ideas. So it's like a scrap of an idea about a bucket list trip you want to take someday. And then when you actually get time to think about making that trip a reality, you're already jump started because you already have a handful of ideas saved.
And you're already planting the seeds for your experience. And look, I get it. If some of you are like, I want to know where all the American food is because I'm not eating anything that Anthony Bourdain would suggest, right? Or you can find the folks who are like so edgy and everything in between.
You can do that, but as you said, it's about the experience when you're there. Right. So if you go to Paris, frankly, or London, and you have little kids and you need to get out in a park, there's amazing park spaces that are there. So some of it might be that, like, if maybe you're not a foodie, so maybe it's what parks that you want to see while you're there. That's or what museums that you want to remember, or a tucked away little museum that somebody told you about. For me, it's coffee shops. So years ago, I had to sell a business in Australia, and I learned what a flat white was. You know, I hate the flat whites at Starbucks because those are not flat whites. Any Australian will tell you that is not a flat white. So for me, it's like, what's the local coffee, whether it's, a cappuccino in the morning in Italy, and don't drink one in the afternoon, go straight for an espresso or macchiato, but finding all those little coffee shops that you want to go to. So Portico doesn't have to be about planning. It's also just about saving those ideas. It could be you sit at lunch and you're like, I want to go shopping this afternoon. What are all the stores that I saved where I want to shop that I don't need a reservation for, but I need to remember what they are.
Right.
So a whole variety of ways that you can use it.
Oh, or if you're going to Istanbul, how am I going to go through the market? And, so it can be so many wonderful things. I love that. And I'm just curious, how did you come up with the name Portico?
Oh, that took a lot of time. And there are a couple of different naming tactics. We did a lot. I did a lot of brainstorming. I had friends do brainstorming. I sat in Barnes and Nobles and looked at the shelves and books and titles to see what they were there and how I could think about it. It was named something completely different first. It was named Pura Vida in the beginning, kind of the good life, because that's how I think about travel. And then, frankly, it was in Colorado with a good friend from college who is a marketing person, very creative. She was on the team that branded Dasani, and we had a glass of wine sitting on a bed, just kind of tossing out ideas. And she came up with Dossier, which looked amazing on the website that we found it. There was just a really cool font. And all of a sudden, Portico came to mind for me. And I was like, oh, interesting. But then back to what we were talking about before, we tested it. So I actually went and tested those two names with images on Usability Hub and said to, a random person, this is the name of a company. What does it do? And when we did Dossier, 75% of them said it was about files and organization. I was like, well, that's really boring. And when we did Portico, 75% of people said it was about travel. All sorts of different reasons, but
I love that.
travel. And for me, Portico, as you know, it's the Italian word for a covered front porch. So it's like your walkway to the world of travel.
Thank you for that. I did not know if that was the meaning of it. I just felt like the port part was so important.
So a lot of people chose port. For me, it was the portico and kind of the walkway, but a lot of people did think port.
Just because, you're coming in and you want to have an adventure, wherever that might be. It could be St. Louis or it could be St. Tropez, wherever. Oh, I love that. Something fierce. Now you've been on this journey for how long as a founder?
A couple of years.
Yeah, a couple of years. And then you're fully in it full time?
I'm fully in it full time, full energy, heart and soul.
Congratulations on that. As you've crawled through this experience, I know you've had some wonderful, uplifting, top of the mountain, yes moments, as well as those dark days of the soul moments. How have you kept your mindset strong and dissolved the chokeholds that many founders can have in building their business?
That's a really important question, Andy, and it changes over time, I would say. Yeah. So I think about it in a couple different buckets, and I sometimes have to visit all of them to figure out which one's working in a particular time frame. But one, I always say that as a founder, you need to find your cheerleaders. So who are the people that inspire you about the business? In the beginning, they may be friends, they may just be motivators. At this point in time where we are with Portico, it's users. I save all the user feedback that they send us. And frankly, on any low day, I can just go and look at that. And when I see things that were like, where have you been? I just can't believe it. I finally found you, comments like that, or the fact that they used to hate trip planning, but now they love it. Those are things that keep me going and kind of re-motivate me. And then for me, on the other side, I think every founder needs a mindfulness practice. And for me, it's a bit of meditation. It's also a bit of yoga. And you have to check those. And if those aren't working, you might need some positive affirmations or something else. But there's just so much going on in your world at all times. And you're thinking about so many different things that being able to calm your mind such that you can have some clear space to kind of step back and really reflect, I think is really important. Alison Byers mentioned the other day that she tries to not work on the weekends, and it's really hard, but I also think it's really important to take at least a day, or every once in a while to take a day and be away from your phone and away from your computer and potentially even away from people.
Oh yeah. And Stephen Covey always talked about that. Take that 24 hours.
You go for a hike, do forest bathing, like something to just clear your mind such that you come back refreshed and rejuvenated.
Well, here's what I'm going to be doing on the Stitch That on a Pillow, folks. It's find your cheerleaders. Stitch that on a pillow. I can see that sitting on the couch. Find your cheerleaders. Okay. But yeah, the mindfulness is so important. And folks, you don't need to do it alone. It really is helpful if you have, someone who's unbiased who you can talk to, whether it's someone you hire or as part of your advisory, just somebody who
100%.
is, if they're not a founder, they're a professional of some kind. So they understand what you're going through, because it's too much to put on your family and friends. Okay. They want your happiness. They want you to be a winner, but not everybody's cut out for the entrepreneur life, nor do they understand it. They don't understand that when those big, hairy problems come your way, you're actually enlivened after you get over moments of fear. You're enlivened by that. That's what you do best. And so for you, it's like, yay. And for them, it's like, oh no.
You need an unbiased source that you can talk to. Your friends and family love you and can support you. But they also are going to be hesitant to ask you those hard, critical questions.
That's right. And now you've been at this for a few years. How have you seen already that the entrepreneurship life has served you both personally and professionally?
Wow. Andy, it's such a joy. I mentioned early on that I wanted to get into a world where I could create something and run a business. So being able to have created a product with our team and our community that is serving people, that is making travel more enjoyable for them, and is really helping them along their journey. And at the same time, having been able to do it for our team, one of my favorite team things was when we did a wine happy hour, and it was every person who'd done any work for us was on the phone, and kind of watching those interactions and watching the relationships build among our team members as well, whether freelance or full-time. For me, that's been an amazing gift. Both for me and that hopefully I've given to them to be able to have this experience.
Oh, that's so beautiful and so well said. Yay, what a leader you are. How can the Startup Life Live community add wind to your sails? What are you working on that's hard right now that we could give you a lift with?
Sure. So a couple different things. So one is just word of mouth. How do we tell more people about Portico so that we can help more people? So if you have a friend who's a great traveler, tell them to go check out Portico. If you're a traveler, go into Portico, create one of your favorite trips that you've had, send it to friends, as suggestions or ideas, and kind of start dreaming yourself. If you know companies that are interested in reaching the type of traveler that's on Portico, who really loves research and enjoying kind of understanding a culture as to where they're going, have them reach out to me. We'd love to talk to them and find ways to partner with them. And then Andy, you mentioned before kind of fundraising. We are in the process of talking to some people about fundraising. So if there's somebody in particular that's interested on the investing side, we'd be open to chatting with them too.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. Yay. I'm so happy with all your success. And I'm so happy that you came on the show and shared with us profoundly wonderful and outstanding advice and information from your founder journey. There are so many gems here that I know founders around the world will be able to take and pull back and think about and resonate with, but also apply with their own businesses. And just seeing you as a role model, Jacqueline, as a leader of this company, and just your deep understanding of what that looks and feels like is just such an honor. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your experience with us today.
Thank you, Andy. It's been so fun to be here. Hopefully some of these nuggets have helped, because at times it can feel like you're on a journey by yourself, whether you're co-founder, sole founder, whatever you are. So please know you're not. There's lots of people that you can go talk to, and I'm happy to answer other questions later as well, because it can be such a fun, exciting journey. You just have to figure out how to navigate the ups and downs. But thank you so much for having me. I love what you do and how much you're supporting founders day in and day out.
Thank you. And take Jacqueline up on our offer, because it takes a village to raise a business, folks, to get a startup off the ground. And talking to other founders is so helpful. Be specific. I'm having this challenge. What are your thoughts? Or can you, give me some direction? Do it. Ask for direction. Folks are out there to help you. We learned that from Jacqueline's story, how many people she went and asked questions of to help her, right?
A lot. I still do.
That's never going to stop. Thank you, Jacqueline. I'm going to pop you in the green room and wrap up the show. I'm so grateful that you joined me today. Thank you. So excited for Portico travel. And I know, Mia, you said earlier, I'm ready to go travel again. I can't wait. Portico story. Yeah. Speaking from the construction world, I know, Mia, I know, but you are such a world traveler. And I know you and many folks are ready to get out there and start having experiences with other folks, other countries, other villages, whatever that looks like for you. Next week, we've got some great, really for the rest of the year, we've got some great founders booked on the Startup Life Live show. So I want to remind everybody how they can get the alerts, which is right here. Join the Startup Life Live meetup group. You're going to get alerts. I'm not going to bother you with anything else but alerts as to who's coming on, sharing their wisdom. And I know there's going to be someone that you can learn from coming up soon. And also, you can always listen to the show on a podcast. Yay, Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. I turn this show into a podcast like in the next hour or two. That's how quickly we do it. And for those of you who would like to help the startup ecosystem and have a greater impact on the startup ecosystem by helping the Startup Life Live show reach those pockets of folks around the world who don't have the wonderful resources that we do here at our major cities, please reach out to me, Andy@andylyons.com. We can do some great activation. We can help you with whatever you've got going on. But remember, this is a platform that amplifies diverse founder voices. So we're making an impact everywhere we glow. All right, folks, wrapping it up today with always the last of the quotes that I love to share. And it's from A.A. Milne, and it asks that you promise me to please remember that you're braver than you believe and you're stronger than you seem. And as Jacqueline and I hear all the time here in Boston, you're wicked smarter than you think. So keep going. You're amazing. Reach out to me. I want to hear how your journey's going as well, and send some wind into your sail. Wishing you all a delicious day wherever you're glowing. Mwah. See you next time.